The colony ship Endeavour drifted through the black void of space like a dying whale. Inside, 50,000 human souls waited for death to come. Captain Maria Santos stood on the bridge, her hands gripping the railing so hard her knuckles had turned white. The main view screen showed nothing but stars and darkness. Beautiful and cold, uncaring. "Life support is at 15%, the chief engineer reported. His voice was steady, but his hands shook. "We have maybe 6 hours left. 8 if we shut down non-essential sections." Maria closed her eyes. Non-essential sections. That meant choosing which parts of the ship would die first, which families would suffocate before the others. She had joined the colonial fleet to give humanity a future among the stars. Instead, she would be remembered as the captain who led 50,000 people to their graves. "Send the distress signal again," she said quietly. "All frequencies. Captain, we've been broadcasting for 3 days. There's no one out here. Send it again." The engineer nodded and turned back to his console. They all knew the truth. Humanity was new to faster-than-light travel. They had only managed to build 6 colony ships, and Endeavour was the first to travel this far from Earth. The FTL drive had torn itself apart 2 days into the journey, leaving them stranded in neutral space. No human ship could reach them in time. And the other alien species they had met during their brief time in galactic space had made it clear that humanity was not welcome. Primitives, savages, deathworlders who didn't belong among the civilized stars. Ambassador Shunwei sat in her quarters, writing a letter to her daughter back on Earth. She was 73 years old, too old to be starting over on a new world, but she had volunteered anyway. Her daughter had cried at the spaceport. Now Chunwei understood that her daughter would never stop crying. "I want you to know that I died doing something brave," she wrote. "I died reaching for the stars. I died believing that humanity deserves a place in this galaxy. Don't let them tell you we don't belong out here. We belong anywhere we have the courage to go." She wiped her eyes and saved the file. The message would never reach Earth. It would drift in the ship's computers until the backup power finally died, and then it would be lost forever like everything else. A klaxon suddenly blared through the ship. Shunwei jumped to her feet, her heart racing. Had something else failed? Were they going to die even faster than expected? She rushed into the corridor and nearly collided with a young father carrying his daughter. The girl was crying and the father looked terrified. "What's happening?" he shouted over the alarm. "I don't know." They ran together toward the nearest observation deck. Other people were already there, pressing their faces against the reinforced windows. Chenwei pushed through the crowd and looked out into space. Ships, dozens of them, appearing out of nowhere in flashes of blue light. They were smaller than Endeavour, sleek and elegant with curved hulls that reminded Chunwei of seashells. She had never seen designs like these before. "Are they here to help us?" someone whispered. "Or are they here to finish us off?" No one answered. Humanity had not made many friends in space. The lead ship moved closer, and a communication channel opened on every screen throughout Endeavour. The face that appeared was not human. It had large, dark eyes and blue-gray skin that seemed to shimmer. 4 thin tentacles grew from where a human would have a chin, moving gently as the creature spoke. "Human vessel Endeavour, this is Elder Schlara of the Cathari Concordat," the alien said. The translation software turned the strange, whistling sounds into English. "We have received your distress call." "We are here to help?" The observation deck erupted in shouts and tears. People grabbed each other, laughing and crying at the same time. Chenwei felt her legs go weak, and she had to lean against the wall to stay standing. "Thank you," she whispered, though no one could hear her over the celebration. "Thank you." Captain Santos appeared on the communication channel, her face streaked with tears she wasn't trying to hide. "Elder Schlara, our life support is failing. We have less than 6 hours remaining." "We understand, Captain," Schlara replied. The alien's face was hard to read, but her voice was gentle. "We are preparing to evacuate your people to our vessels. However, I must be honest with you. We do not have enough space for everyone on our current ships. We have sent for 2 of our colony vessels to assist. They will arrive in 4 hours. 4 hours. They would make it, barely. How many can you take on your current ships? Santos asked. Approximately 10,000, the captain nodded slowly. We'll begin evacuation procedures immediately. Priority to children and the elderly. For the next 4 hours, Endeavor became a controlled chaos of movement and hope. Shuttles moved back and forth between the human ship and the Cathari vessels. The aliens were calm and efficient, treating each human refugee with careful respect. They provided water, food, and medical care. They answered questions patiently. Even when the same questions were asked dozens of times, Chun Wei was in the last group to evacuate. She stood in the shuttle bay, watching families board the small craft that would carry them to safety. A young Cathari crew member approached her, offering a hand to help her walk. Chen Wei noticed that the alien moved stiffly, as if in pain. "Are you injured?" she asked. The Cathari made a soft whistling sound. "I am fine, human Chen Wei. Please, come aboard." "You are safe now." The 2 colony vessels arrived exactly on time. They were massive, even larger than Endeavor, and clearly designed to carry thousands of people across the galaxy. As Chinwei watched from the window of the Cathari ship, she saw the colony vessels open their docking bays and begin taking on the remaining humans. It was only later, when everyone was safe and the immediate panic had faded, that Elder Shlara explained the full cost of the rescue. The Cathari Concordat was not a powerful species. They had only 5 colony ships total, built over generations of careful saving and planning. By sending 2 of those ships to rescue humanity, they had crippled their own expansion plans for the next 50 years. They had given up their dreams so that humans could live. Why? Captain Santos asked. They were meeting in a small conference room on SLR's flagship. The elder sat across from Santos and Chun Wei, her tentacles moving in slow, thoughtful patterns. "Why would you sacrifice so much for us? We're nothing to you. We're barely even part of the galactic community." "All sentient life is precious," Shalara replied simply. "We value life above all else. How could we do anything less?" Chun Wei felt tears running down her face. She was not normally an emotional person, but something about this moment broke through all her defenses. These aliens had saved them, not for profit or politics or advantage. Simply because it was right. She stood up from her chair and placed her hand over her heart in the old earth gesture of sincerity. "Elder Shlara, on behalf of humanity, I swear this to you. We will never forget what you have done for us. We will carry this debt for as long as our species exists. And when the day comes that you need help, we will come. No matter the cost, no matter the distance, we will come." Shalara's tentacles curled into what the translation software identified as a smile. "That is kind, Ambassador, but unnecessary. We ask for nothing in return. Nevertheless," Chun Wei said firmly, "we will remember. Humanity pays its debts." The elder bowed her head respectfully, clearly not understanding the weight of the promise that had just been made. How could she? Humans were primitive and weak, barely capable of reaching the stars. The idea that they might someday be in a position to help the Cathari seemed impossible. But Chinwei meant every word. And as Endeavor survivors were transported to safety, as 50,000 human lives continued because of Cathari kindness, the ambassador made a private vow. She would live long enough to see the debt repaid. Somehow, some way, humanity would prove that they honored their promises. In the cold mathematics of galactic politics, the Cathari had made a foolish choice. They had weakened themselves to save a species that might never be useful to them. But in 200 years, the galaxy would learn that humans remembered everything, especially kindness. And the Cathari's act of mercy would reshape the fate of 1,000,000,000,000 souls. 150 years had changed everything. Council member Thaxim of the Peleron Assembly sat in the great chamber of the Galactic Council, watching the holographic display with growing unease. The display showed star charts, trade routes, and military positions. But more than anything else, it showed the impossible rise of humanity. "They should not have been able to expand this quickly," Thaxim said to his aide. "It took our species 800 years to colonize 20 systems. The humans have claimed 65 systems in 150 years. They breed quickly, the aide responded. And they are not afraid of hostile worlds. Where we would establish research stations, they establish full colonies. Their homeworld made them resilient. Resilient. That was a polite word for it. The reports from Earth had shocked the entire council when they first arrived. Earth was a nightmare world by galactic standards. Higher gravity than most civilized species could tolerate. Extreme weather patterns. Tectonic activity that could destroy cities without warning. Predators that hunted in packs and prey that fought back with horns and venom. Disease, famine, ice ages, and volcanic eruptions, and somehow, impossibly, humans had not just survived Earth, they had thrived. They had conquered their planet so completely that they had started running out of challenges, so they invented new ones. They had spent thousands of years fighting each other in increasingly sophisticated ways. Their history was soaked in blood. What is the status of their military? Thexim asked. The aide pulled up new data, growing rapidly. They now have 40,000 warships. More importantly, their ships are designed differently than ours. They prioritize redundancy and armor over shields. They can take damage that would cripple our vessels and keep fighting. And their tactics? The aide hesitated. Troubling. They do not follow conventional warfare doctrine. They use strategies that other species consider excessive, aggressive, unpredictable. Thexim had read the reports. He knew what the aide meant. Humans fought like nothing else in the galaxy. They used ambush and false retreats. They sacrificed their own ships to achieve objectives. They had crews trained to keep fighting even after their vessels were crippled. Other species surrendered when their shields failed and their hull was breached. Humans kept shooting until their ship was literally torn apart. The galaxy had started calling them names: Deathworlders, the Unkillable, the Spike-Driven. Some species refused to conduct military exercises with human forces because their tactics were too disturbing to watch. They make me nervous, Thexim admitted. A species that refuses to surrender is a dangerous species. Perhaps, but they have been peaceful neighbors so far. They honor their treaties and their trade agreements. They have even shared some of their medical technology with smaller species. That was true. Humans were strange that way. They could be generous and helpful one moment, then absolutely ruthless the next. It was as if they contained multitudes within them, both angel and demon, and you never knew which one you would meet. The council session began, and Thexim took his seat among the representatives of 200 species. The topic of the day was the Vrex Dominion. The Vrex were an old species, powerful and militaristic. They had been expanding their territory for 300 years, always carefully, always staying just within the bounds of galactic law. But recently they had become bolder. They had begun demanding that smaller species surrender their worlds for the greater good of galactic security. The Vrex have issued an ultimatum to the Cathari Concordat, High Chancellor Vexinar announced. They demand that the Cathari surrender their homeworld within 30 days. The planet contains rare minerals that the Vrex claim are necessary for their security. Murmurs rippled through the chamber. The Cathari were well-liked, peaceful traders and explorers who bothered no one. They had no military and no ability to defend themselves against the Vrex war machine. What response do we recommend? Someone asked. None, Vexinar replied. The Vrex have 20,000 warships. If we intervene, we risk a war that could devastate half the galaxy. The Council cannot afford to fight the Vrex over one small species and one planet. Thexim felt sick. This was the third time this year that the Council had refused to protect a weaker species from Vrex aggression. The balance of power was shifting, and everyone knew it. The Vrex were testing boundaries, seeing how far they could push before someone pushed back. But who would dare? The Vrex were too powerful. Even the combined fleets of several Council species might not be enough to stop them. The debate continued for hours. But the outcome was predetermined. The Council would issue a strongly worded statement expressing concern, but they would take no action. The Cathari would be abandoned to their fate. As Thexim left the chamber, his aide approached him with urgent news. The Cathari have sent distress calls to 47 different species, the aide reported. They are begging for help, protection, anything, and everyone is refusing. No one wants to anger the Vrex. Thaksim nodded slowly. It made sense. It was practical politics. But it left a sour taste in his mouth. Did the humans receive a call? He asked. Yes, Ambassador Chunwei personally brought it before their parliament. Chunwei? Thaksim's translator struggled with the unfamiliar human name. Why do I know that name? She was one of the survivors of the Endeavour rescue 150 years ago. The Cathari saved her life. Thaksim felt a chill run down his spine. He remembered hearing about that incident, though it had happened before his time. The Cathari had crippled their own expansion to save a species they barely knew. At the time, everyone had thought it was foolish. A waste of resources on primitives who would never matter, but the primitives had mattered. They had become one of the most powerful species in the galaxy in less than 2 centuries. What was the human response? Thaksim asked, though part of him already knew. They are debating it now. The vote is expected within the hour. The results came faster than expected. The human parliament had voted to intervene. They would defend the Cathari against the Vrex Dominion. The galaxy reacted with shock and confusion. Why would humanity risk war with the Vrex over a species that could offer them nothing in return? It made no strategic sense. The humans would be vastly outnumbered, fighting far from their own territory, defending a species that had no resources worth the cost. Then Ambassador Chunwei's speech was released to the public networks, translated into every galactic language. 150 years ago, humanity was dying in the void, the old woman said. Her face was deeply wrinkled, her hair completely white, but her eyes burned with fire. We were weak, we were alone, we were nobody. And when we cried out for help, only one species answered. The Cathari sacrificed their future to save ours. They asked for nothing in return. Chunwei leaned forward, her voice growing harder. Some say that was a long time ago, that we owe them nothing after so many years, that we should be practical and think of our own interests. But I say this, what kind of species would we be if we forgot the ones who saved us? What kind of people would we be if we let our saviors die when we have the power to help them? She stood up, placing her hand over her heart. We made a promise 150 years ago. We said we would come when they needed us. We said we would pay our debt. And humanity keeps its promises, all of them, forever. The speech ended with a final statement that would be remembered. For 1,000 years, to the Vrex Dominion we say this, stand aside. The Cathari are under human protection now. Leave them alone, or you will learn why Earth is called a death world. You will learn what happens when you threaten someone humanity cares about. Thaksim watched the speech 3 times, each time feeling more unsettled. The old human woman had a look in her eyes that he recognized from predators on his own homeworld. The look of something that would kill or die without hesitation. The Vrex responded with a message of their own. It was broadcast across the entire galaxy, a show of dominance and power. Humanity is overreaching, the Vrex High Commander declared. You are a young species, barely out of your cradle. You have 40,000 ships, we have 20,000. But our ships are larger, our weapons more powerful, our crews more experienced. More importantly, you will be fighting far from your home, while we will be defending our border. This is suicide. The Vrex commander's image filled the screen, all teeth and scales and ancient pride. We give you one chance to reconsider. Back down now, and we will forget this insult. Continue, and we will crush you. Your species will be set back 100 years. All of this to defend a people who mean nothing. The human response came within the hour. It was not a speech or a diplomatic message. It was a simple video feed from Earth's orbital command center. It showed the human military mobilizing, every ship, every fleet, every soldier. The entire strength of humanity's navy was moving toward Cathari space. 50,000 warships, filling the void like a swarm of metal insects. The message attached to the video was only 7 words long. We are coming. Stand aside or burn. The galaxy watched in disbelief. Humanity had just left their entire territory defenseless to save one small species. They had committed everything. They had to a battle that strategic analysts said they could not win. Vaxim sat in his office, running the calculations over and over. It didn't make sense. Humans where Supaseshkara stood in the council chamber of her homeworld, watching the sky darken with Vrex warships. She was the great-great-granddaughter of Elder Shlara, as she carried her ancestor's name with pride. But pride would not save her people now. They are demanding our final answer, her military advisor said. The Cathari had no real military, just a small defense force meant for pirates and accidents. Against the Vrex Dominion, they were nothing. We have 6 hours to evacuate the government or they will begin bombardment. Shakara's tentacles curled in distress. 6 hours. They had been trying to evacuate for days, but there were billions of Cathari on the homeworld. Where would they go? How could they leave their home, the world where their species had evolved, where every city held 1,000 years of history? Have we received any responses to our calls for help? She asked, though she already knew the answer. 47 species received our messages. 47 species have refused. The Galactic Council has expressed their concern but will take no action. We are alone. Alone, just as humanity had been alone 150 years ago. Doshara remembered the stories her great-great-grandmother had told her. Stories of the human ship dying in the void. Stories of the choice to send their precious colony vessels to save a species they had never met. Elder Shlara had died 30 years ago, but her words still echoed through Cathari culture. We saved them because it was right. Because all life is precious. We expected nothing in return, and we received everything that mattered. We received the knowledge that we had done good in the universe, but good had not been enough. The Cathari had continued their slow, peaceful expansion. They had traded fairly and explored carefully. They had bothered no one, threatened no one, harmed no one, and now they would die because they had no weapons to defend themselves. Send the messages again, Shara ordered. All frequencies. I don't care if they've already refused. Send them again. Her advisor began to protest, but stopped when he saw her face. He bowed and left to obey. Dashkara walked to the window and looked up at the sky. Vrex ships hung there like dark clouds, blotting out the stars. 10,000 warships, more than enough to crack a planet's crust if they wished. The Vrex were being merciful by offering evacuation time. But mercy had limits. Her communication console chimed. Shara's heart sank. Probably another refusal. Another species explaining why they couldn't help, why it wasn't practical, why the Cathari should simply surrender and hope for mercy. She accepted the call without looking at the identifier. This is Shkara, speaker of the Cathari Concordat. Speaker Shkara, this is Admiral James Rodriguez of the Human Defense Fleet. Shkara's tentacles went rigid. Humans? She knew the species, of course, everyone did. The Deathwielders who had risen from nowhere to become a galactic power. The species her great-great-grandmother had saved. Admiral Rodriguez, she said carefully. We did not send a distress call to humanity. We did not wish to bother you with our problems. You didn't need to send us a call directly, Rodriguez replied. His face appeared on her screen, dark-skinned and serious. We monitor galactic distress frequencies. We heard you calling for help. We heard everyone refusing. Shakara felt her translator struggling with the human's emotional subtext. He sounded angry? No, not quite. Something deeper and colder. That is kind of you to notice, she said. But I understand that humanity cannot help us. The Vrex are too powerful and we are too far from your territory. It would not be practical to... Practical? Rodriguez interrupted. Speaker Shkara, do you know who Ambassador Chunwei was? Yes, she was one of the survivors from the Endeavor. My great-great-grandmother saved her. She was one of the people your ancestor saved. She spent her entire life making sure humanity never forgot that. She died 3 days ago. Her last words were about your people, about remembering the debt. Shkara didn't know what to say. The human admiral's face was hard, but his eyes were wet. Ambassador Chunwei brought your distress call to our parliament personally, Rodriguez continued. She was 100 and... 87 years old and dying, but she stood in front of our government and reminded us of who we were when we were weak, who helped us when we were dying, and who we promised to help in return. That was 150 years ago, Shura whispered. Your people owe us nothing. Time erases all debts. No, Rodriguez said firmly. Time changes nothing. Humanity remembers. Humanity keeps its promises. And humanity is coming to help you. Shkara felt her knees weaken. Admiral, I don't understand. You cannot possibly. We have mobilized our entire fleet. 50,000 warships. We will arrive in Cathari space in 72 hours. Hold on until then, that's an order, Speaker. You hold on. The communication ended before Shkara could respond. She stood in silence, staring at the empty screen, trying to process what she had just heard. The humans were coming. All of them. The entire military might of one of the galaxy's most powerful species, crossing the void to defend a people who could offer them nothing in return. Her advisor burst into the room, his tentacles waving in excitement. Speaker! We just received a message from Earth, from the human government. They're broadcasting it on all frequencies. I know, Shkara said quietly. I just spoke with one of their admirals. No, you don't understand. They're broadcasting it to everyone, the entire galaxy. You need to see this. He activated the main view screen. The image showed the human parliament building on Earth. A spokesperson stood at a podium, and behind her the building was lit with blue light. Blue, the color of Cathari's skin. This is a message from humanity. To the Vrex Dominion and to all species of the Galactic Council, the spokesperson announced. 150 years ago, when humanity was weak and dying, the Cathari Concordat saved us. They sacrificed their own future to give us ours. They asked for nothing in return. The camera panned across the Parliament building, showing thousands of humans gathered outside, all holding blue lights in tribute. Today, the Cathari are threatened. Today, the galaxy has abandoned them. Today, they are alone. But they are not alone. They will never be alone again. The spokesperson's voice grew harder. Humanity has voted to intervene. We will defend the Cathari with every ship we have and every soldier we can field. We will pay our debt. The image changed to show human fleets mobilizing. Thousands of ships moving through space in perfect formation. The sight was beautiful and terrifying. To the Vrex Dominion we say this, we are coming. Stand aside or burn with them. We will not negotiate. We will not be deterred. You have threatened the species that saved us, and that is something we cannot forgive. The message ended with a simple text display. Humanity remembers. Humanity pays its debts, always. Shashara's communication console exploded with incoming calls. Other species, suddenly interested in the Cathari situation. Reporters wanting interviews. Strategic analysts wanting to understand human thinking. And one call from the Vrex Dominion itself. She accepted the Vrex call with trembling tentacles. The face that appeared was all scales and teeth. High Commander Zekthar, Supreme Leader of the Vrex military forces. He looked amused. Speaker Shkara, he said in a voice like grinding stone. I have just received a very entertaining message from the humans. They claim they will defend you. They will, Shkara said, finding courage she didn't know she had. They are coming. Let them come, Zekthar replied. We have 10,000 warships surrounding your planet. The humans are sending 50,000. But they will arrive exhausted from the journey, far from their supply lines in unfamiliar territory. This is a battle they cannot win. Perhaps, Shara said quietly. But they are coming anyway. That should tell you something. It tells me they are fools. Sentimental fools who value emotion over strategy. Zekthar leaned forward. I will offer the humans one chance. 1. They can turn back now, and we will forget this insult. They can live to fight another day. But if they continue, we will destroy them. We will cripple their military so badly that it will take them a century to recover. All of this to save you. A species that means nothing. We mean something to them, Shura said. That's what you don't understand. We saved them once. Now they will save us. Not because it's practical. Not because we can repay them. but because that's who they are. Zekthar's laugh was like breaking glass. Then they will die as fools. We will destroy their fleet, conquer your world, and the galaxy will learn that sentiment is weakness. The Vrex commander terminated the call. Shakara stood alone in her office, looking out at the enemy ships in her sky. 72 hours. She had to keep her people alive for 72 hours. Then the humans would arrive, and the galaxy would see something it had never seen before. She activated the planetary communication system, her voice broadcasting to every Cathari on the homeworld. "My people," she said, "I will not lie to you. The Vrex want our world. The galaxy has abandoned us. We have no military that can stand against them. By all practical measures, we should surrender." She paused, looking up at the sky filled with enemy ships. "But we are not surrendering, because we are not alone. 150 years ago, we made a choice to save a dying species. We didn't do it for profit or po." The human fleet arrived in Cathari space like a thunderstorm made of metal and fire. "Hi." Commander Zekthar watched the sensor readings with growing disbelief. 50,000 ships had just appeared at the edge of the system in a coordinated faster-than-light jump. The precision required for such a maneuver was extraordinary. The fact that the humans had done it while crossing half the galaxy was terrifying. "All ships to battle positions," he ordered. His 10,000 warships moved into formation around the Cathari homeworld, a defensive sphere that would be impossible to break without massive losses. "Prepare to broadcast my message to the human fleet." Zekthar's face appeared on every screen in the system. The human ships, the Cathari planet below, and countless observers across the galaxy all received the same transmission. "Admiral Rodriguez of the Human Defense Fleet," Zekthar said formally, "you have made a mistake. You are outnumbered and far from home. Your supply lines are stretched to breaking. Your ships are exhausted from the journey. You cannot possibly win this battle." He leaned forward, his voice becoming almost gentle. "I am giving you one final chance. Turn back now. Admit that you cannot save them. Return to your territory, and we will let this pass. You will have lost nothing but pride. Continue, and you will lose everything." Admiral Rodriguez appeared on the return channel. He was sitting in the command chair of his flagship, surrounded by his crew. His face was calm, almost relaxed. "High Commander Zekthar," Rodriguez said. "Thank you for your concern about our strategic position. You are correct. We are outnumbered. We are exhausted. We are far from home. By every tactical calculation, we should not be here." The Admiral stood up from his chair. "But we are here anyway. Because 150 years ago, the Cathari saved us when we were dying. They didn't calculate the odds. They didn't worry about the cost. They just came. And now we're returning the favor." Rodriguez walked toward the camera, his eyes hard as stone. "You asked us to turn back? The answer is no. You asked us to abandon our friends? The answer is no. You asked us to be practical and save ourselves? The answer is no." He placed his hand over his heart in the human gesture of oath-taking. "We are humanity. We remember. We keep our promises. And we are going to teach you something about trying to hurt people we care about." The channel cut off. For a moment, there was silence in Zekthar's command center. Then the human fleet opened fire. The battle that followed would be studied in military academies for the next 1,000 years. Not because of brilliant strategy or revolutionary tactics, but because it revealed something fundamental about humanity that the galaxy had not understood. Humans did not fight like other species. The first wave of human ships charged directly into the Vrex defensive line. Vrex weapons fire tore through shields and hulls, destroying dozens of human vessels in seconds. Any other species would have pulled back, reassessed, tried a different approach. The humans kept coming, a damaged human destroyer, its engines failing and half its hull blown away. Used its last functioning thrusters to ram directly into a Vrex battlecruiser. The impact shattered both ships, but the explosion created a gap in the Vrex formation. "They just don't stop," a Vrex tactical officer whispered in horror. Their ship was dead? Why didn't they surrender? Because they're human, Zekthar replied, finally understanding what he was facing. They don't surrender. The human fleet wasn't trying to outmaneuver the Vrex. They weren't trying to be clever or efficient. They were simply willing to pay a higher price. Every human ship that died took one or more Vrex vessels with it. Every suicide run created openings for other human ships to exploit, and they had 50,000 ships to spend. Captain Lisa Chun commanded the human carrier Defiant. She was the great-granddaughter of Ambassador Chun Wei, and she had volunteered for this mission the moment it was announced. Now her ship was taking heavy fire, shields down, hull breaching in 3 sections. Captain, we need to retreat. Her first officer shouted over the alarms. We've lost main power. Negative, Chun replied calmly. All remaining power to forward weapons. Target that Vrex command ship. Captain, we don't have enough power to— I gave you an order. The Defiant fired every weapon it had left. The barrage slammed into the Vrex command ship, overwhelming its shields and punching holes through its armor. The Vrex ship began to list, its engines failing. Now, Chun said quietly, all remaining crew to escape pods. You have 60 seconds. Her first officer stared at her. Captain, what are you— I'm going to ram it. Get off my ship. That's an order. The crew evacuated in a rush of panic and professionalism. Captain Chain sat alone in her command chair, manually piloting the dying carrier toward the enemy vessel. She thought about her great-grandmother, about the promise that had been made 150 years ago. We're coming, Shlara, she whispered. We remembered. The Defiant struck the Vrex command ship at full speed. The explosion lit up the entire battlefield on the Cathari homeworld below. Billions watched the battle with tears streaming down their faces. The humans were dying for them. Thousands of ships, millions of people, all burning in the void because the Cathari had once shown kindness to strangers. Speaker Shakara stood on the balcony of the government building, watching the flashes of light in the sky. Each flash was a ship dying. Each light was hundreds of souls lost. They're losing, her advisor said quietly. The Vrex are too strong? No, Shakara replied. Look closer. The Vrex formation was collapsing. Every suicide run created gaps. Every kamikaze attack took out key ships. The humans were losing more vessels than the Vrex, but they had more to lose. And they never stopped. Never hesitated. Never slowed. High Commander Zekthar watched his fleet crumble with growing horror. He had expected the humans to be tough. He had not expected them to be absolutely, completely fearless. Tactical report, he demanded. We've destroyed 20,000 human ships, his tactical officer reported. But we've lost 6,000 of our own. They're trading at 3-1, and they still outnumber us. 20,000 ships. That represented millions of lives, years of construction, unimaginable resources. Any other species would have already surrendered after such losses. The humans were accelerating their attacks. A human battleship, engines destroyed and drifting helplessly, used its last missiles to turn itself into a guided bomb. It crashed into a Vrex weapons platform, destroying a facility that had taken decades to build. Another human ship, its crew dead but its computer core intact, continued fighting on automated systems. It held position over a damaged Vrex frigate and fired until both ships were nothing but debris. They're insane, Zekthar whispered. They're all insane. Sir, we're receiving messages from our outlying ships. They want permission to retreat. Denied. We hold position. But the retreat was already beginning. Vrex ships at the edges of the formation started pulling back, unable to face the relentless human assault. The sight of burning human vessels, charging forward without fear or hesitation, had broken something in the Vrex morale. Admiral Rodriguez watched the Vrex formation collapse and felt no satisfaction. Only grief. 20,000 ships. The names and faces scrolled across his screen, too many to count. Captain Chun, Commander Williams, Lieutenant Zhao, thousands of others. All dead, but the Cathari were safe. All ships pursue the enemy, he ordered. Do not let them regroup. The human fleet pressed forward. Damaged ships that should have been retreating to repair instead pushed deeper into the battle. Crews that should have been exhausted from days of fighting somehow found the strength to continue. It was not human strength or technology that was winning. It was human stubbornness. The absolute refusal to quit, to surrender, to accept defeat. 8 hours into the battle, High Commander Zekthar made his last transmission. Human fleet, this is Zekthar, we surrender. Stop, please, stop the attack. But the humans didn't stop. Not immediately. They pressed the attack for another hour, destroying 3 more Vrex battle groups before Admiral Rodriguez finally gave the ceasefire order. By the time the battle ended, the Vrex Dominion had lost 8,000 ships. Humanity had lost 28,000, but the Cathari homeworld was untouched. Not a single Vrex missile had reached the surface. Speaker, Shikara stood in the ruins of what had been a Vrex orbital weapon platform, now a field of floating debris. The human fleet hung in the sky above her world, battered and burning but victorious. Admiral Rodriguez's face appeared on her screen. He looked exhausted, years older than he had been just days before. Speaker Shikara, he said quietly, the Cathari are safe. The Vrex are retreating. It's over, Admiral. Shikara's tentacles trembled. You lost so many? So many died for us. How can we ever... You already repaid us, Rodriguez interrupted gently. 150 years ago. You saved us when we were weak. Now we've saved you. The debt is paid. But the cost was acceptable, would have been acceptable at twice the price. Because that's what loyalty means. That's what honor means. Rodriguez's tired face managed a small smile. The galaxy needs to learn that kindness is never wasted, that mercy is always remembered, and that humanity never, ever forgets its friends. The channel closed. Shara looked up at the human fleet, at the thousands of ships that had crossed the galaxy for her people, and she finally understood the humans had not come here expecting gratitude or reward. They had. The Galactic Council met in emergency session 3 days after the battle. Council member Thaxim sat in his designated seat, watching his fellow representatives file into the chamber. Everyone looked shaken. Everyone had watched the battle broadcasts. Everyone had seen what humanity was capable of when protecting their friends. Hi. Chancellor Vexinar opened the session with unusual solemnity. We are gathered to discuss the implications of what occurred in Cathari space, the human intervention, the Vrex defeat, and what it means for the future of galactic politics. The chamber erupted in voices. Fear, anger, confusion, all mixing together in a cacophony that the translation system struggled to process. Order! Vexinar demanded. We will speak one at a time. A Peloron military strategist stepped forward. Her tentacles were pale with stress. I have completed our analysis of the battle. The data is ... disturbing. She activated the holographic display. Numbers and charts filled the air, showing casualty rates and tactical assessments. Humanity lost 28,000 ships in that engagement. Based on crew size, that represents approximately 35 million casualties. The chamber fell silent. 35 million. The number was staggering. That represents nearly 20% of their entire military personnel, the strategist continued. Any other species would have surrendered after losing 5%. 10% would be catastrophic. But the humans kept fighting at losses that should have broken them completely. Daxon raised his hand to speak. I have reviewed the same data. What concerns me more is the psychological profile. The humans knew the cost before they started. They calculated the probable losses. They knew they would lose tens of thousands of ships. And they went anyway. For what? Someone demanded. The Cathari offer them nothing. No resources, no territory, no strategic advantage. They threw away millions of lives to repay a debt that was 2 centuries old. Exactly, Thaxin replied quietly. That's what makes them terrifying. They value loyalty above survival. They value honor above practical gain. How do you negotiate with a species like that? How do you calculate their responses? The strategist nodded grimly. I have run simulations. If humanity would sacrifice 20% of their population to defend a minor ally, what would they do if one of their core worlds was attacked? What would they do if their homeworld was threatened? She pulled up new data. The simulations are unanimous. Humanity would fight to extinction rather than surrender. They would destroy the entire galaxy if necessary to ensure their enemy died with them. They operate on spite and stubbornness more than reason. A Vrex representative stood up. It was not High Commander Zekthar. He had resigned in disgrace after the battle. This was Ambassador Kexril, a diplomatic officer trying to salvage what remained of Vrex prestige. The Vrex Dominion wishes to formally surrender to humanity, Kexril announced. We are offering full reparations to the Cathari Concordat, withdrawal from all disputed territories, and immediate cessation of our expansion policies. The chamber buzzed with shock. The Vrex had been one of the most powerful militaries in the galaxy. Now they were suing for peace after a single battle. What did the humans demand? Vexanar asked. Nothing, Kexril replied. That's what makes this so disturbing. We offered them territory, resources, trade agreements. They refused everything. They only demanded we leave the Cathari alone and never threaten them again. They wanted nothing for themselves. Thaxim felt a chill run through his body. A species that fought not for gain but for principle. A species that would die to keep a promise but asked for nothing in return. It defied every model of galactic behavior that had existed for thousands of years. There's something else, the military strategist added. Our intelligence has been analyzing human military doctrine. We've discovered something about their training and culture. She pulled up human military records that had been leaked or captured over the years. Every human soldier is trained from the beginning to never abandon their wounded. Never leave someone behind. They have countless historical examples of soldiers dying to save their comrades. They consider it the highest virtue. Many species have such traditions, someone objected. Not like this, the strategist replied. For humans, it's not just tradition. It's absolute. We found records of human soldiers refusing to follow orders when those orders meant abandoning wounded comrades. They court-martial officers who order retreats that leave people behind. They tell stories about soldiers who saved their friends even when it cost them their lives. She looked around the chamber. Now expand that principle from individual soldiers to entire species. The Cathari saved humans 150 years ago. By human logic, that makes the Cathari family. And humans die for their family. The implications settled over the council like a heavy weight. If humanity would sacrifice millions to save a species they barely knew, what would they do for actual allies? What would they do for species they traded with regularly, fought beside, shared technology with? Thaxim stood up to speak. I propose an immediate review of all our diplomatic relationships with humanity, and I suggest that every species in this council take steps to improve those relationships. Because we now know what it means to be humanity's friend. And more importantly, we know what it means to be their enemy. The motion passed unanimously on the Cathari homeworld. Speaker Shkara stood before a memorial that had been built in a single day. Billions of Cathari had worked without rest to create it. A monument of crystal and steel reaching toward the sky, engraved with the names of every human ship that had been destroyed protecting them. 20-8,000 names. Each one representing hundreds of lives. Admiral Rodriguez stood beside her. His flagship had survived the battle, but barely. He had come down to the planet's surface for the memorial dedication. We can never repay this, Shara said quietly. You know that, don't you? We cannot possibly give you anything equal to what you sacrificed. We don't want repayment, Rodriguez replied. The debt was already paid 150 years ago. This just made us even. Even? Kara's tentacles curled in distress. You lost millions of people. We saved 50,000 humans. The mathematics don't balance. Rodriguez smiled sadly. That's because you're calculating wrong. You didn't just save 50,000 people, you saved humanity's future. Every human alive today exists because your people saved those colonists. Our entire civilization exists because of Cathari kindness. He placed his hand over his heart. More than that, you showed us that the galaxy had room for mercy, for compassion, for species who help others simply because it's right. You proved that not everyone in the stars was hostile or calculating, and that lesson was worth any price. Shakara looked up at the monument, at the names glittering in the sunlight. The galaxy is afraid of you now. They're calling you unpredictable, dangerous. They don't understand why you did this. Let them be afraid, Rodriguez said quietly. Fear will keep them from attacking you again. Fear will make them think twice before threatening any of humanity's friends. Is that what we are now? Friends? More than friends. The Cathari saved us when we were weak. You asked for nothing in return. You simply did good because you could. That makes you family. Rodriguez looked at her with eyes that had seen too much death. And humans protect their family, always, without question. Without calculation, always. Across the galaxy, the message spread. Not just through official channels, but through every trade route, every colony, every species that had heard about the battle. Humanity had made a statement, and the galaxy had heard it loud and clear. Loyalty mattered. Honor mattered. And humans remembered everything. Species that had previously been neutral toward humanity suddenly sought trade agreements. Defensive pacts were offered. Cultural exchanges were proposed. Not because humanity demanded these things, but because everyone wanted to be on the side that humanity would die to protect. The Rex Dominion, once feared across dozens of sectors, became a cautionary tale. They had made the mistake of threatening humanity's friends. They had learned what happened when you calculated that humans were too rational to defend an ally. They had discovered that humans were not rational, not in the way other species understood the term. Thaxim met with Admiral Rodriguez in a private, diplomatic session 2 weeks after the battle. The human looked exhausted. He had attended 437 memorial services in the past 14 days, one for each ship lost. Admiral, Thaxim said carefully, I need to understand. Why did you do it? Your strategists must have told you the cost. Your economists must have calculated the resources wasted. Your politicians must have warned about leaving your own territory vulnerable. Why did you go? Rodriguez was quiet for a long time. When he finally spoke, his voice was soft but firm. 200 years ago, humanity was alone in the dark. We were dying and we cried out for help. 47 species heard us. 46 turned away. Only one came. Only one species cared enough to save us, even though it cost them dearly. He looked directly at Thaxim. We made a promise that day. We said,